still have a lot of really amazing events coming up. So you're here in Constructive Disagreement and hope that you'll join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern for a session with Running Mates, one of our amazing sponsors, on cutting edge campaign data and strategy tools. And check out more of our events as well throughout the rest of the month, which we'll send. We couldn't do this work without our amazing sponsors, and a list of those here: Google, Winnable, Sticky Notes Lab, Running Mates, which I just mentioned, who will be joining us for a session tomorrow. And we have a list of amazing partners who are joining us in our Power Rising Summer programming. Too many here to name, and that's why we put them all in a doc for you, which hoping that one of my friends can drop in the chat soon so you can peruse that. But for the moment, I want to kick it over to a very special guest, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, who happens to be a former Arena Fellow and the Democratic Congresswoman representing Illinois' 14th Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining us, Congresswoman Underwood, and I'll pass it over to you.
Well, hi everybody. I'm a little whitewashed right now, but it'll get it together. I'm so happy to be with you, back with Team Arena, under extraordinary circumstances. It has been a really tough time. I understand today is about partnerships and coalitions and having tough, constructive conversations. And I feel like that's what we do every day in this moment when the news out of Washington and certainly with the Trump team has been to try to divide us, pit us against one another, make folks feel like they have to compete for increasingly scarce resources. It's our job to offer a more positive vision for the future, an alternative path forward. And sometimes, in my opinion, that can just come from creating safe space to convene and have dialogue and to identify that common ground. And so I'm happy that you all have taken the time to be on this training today, that you're prioritizing this skill set. And maybe some of you can bring it to Northern Illinois because we need it too over here in the 14th district. I'll tell you, it's really tough trying to have discussions around shared values with my colleagues who are, eager to celebrate people losing health care, are wanting to applaud, billionaires getting the benefits out of the hands of hungry babies and children, wanting to cheer on a illegal, unconstitutional restriction of voting rights and, redrawing maps across Texas and other red states to restrict folks being able to elect representatives of their choosing. But we still have power. And I think a lot of folks are feeling demoralized, frustrated, angry. You all may know that I'm a nurse. And in nursing, we talk patients and families through the stages of grief, right? And so when there's a traumatic event or challenging event, people start out either angry or in denial. And then over time and with coaching and help, they can get to acceptance. And unfortunately, I think that so many of us have gotten stuck in this loop of anger and denial as we see the actions that Donald Trump and this MAGA majority in the House and Senate have taken. We just continue to be in this feedback loop where we have these raw, real feelings, but don't always have these spaces to have conversation and to move towards solutions that can make everyone's lives better. And so I'm just here to give you the pep talk and say that your efforts are needed so desperately right now. One of the things that have been so surprising to me about my role as a member of Congress and having flipped a seat in my community is just the power of convening, bringing people together for discussions and partnerships that they may not have known. And it could be because of geographical boundaries that they never met a colleague or potential partner 2 counties over. It may be because of, ideologic kind of labels where somebody might call themselves progressive and somebody might call themselves moderate and think that they're not able to find that common ground. It might be because, some people are institutionalists and connected with the party establishment, and others like to fight from the outside and they're leading resistance groups. Whatever it is, right? There's these barriers that have prevented people who share values and want to be working towards a more just and equitable future from coming together. And what I've been really struck by is extending an invitation in my district and say, I want to meet with everybody. Let's come together and strategize a way forward. How skeptical people are walking into the room and how much they might protest the agenda and, you know, what we're seeking to accomplish, but they still show up. And by the end of our time together, they've formed real friendships and they want to meet on the side and not even invite me. And sometimes I feel a little bit left out. But at the end of the day, I know it's for the greater good. And we've been able to rinse and repeat that same kind of strategy, not just in the 14th district, but we've been able to do it as we are trying to improve Democratic comms and work with influencers. I heard Jessica say that she has a successful platform. We got to loop you in, Jessica, to our efforts and working with creators around the country. We are trying to take that same approach as we navigate this space of trying to flip the house and moving into places where they don't have um, robust democratic infrastructure and we can bring people together. This is the nuts and bolts, and you all are experts. Um, and just know that in the Congress, you have a group of folks that are committed to getting things done that will have your back. And so please don't hesitate to reach out if we can help in the future on whatever race you're on or organization you're working with. Um, you're all very much needed. Your voices are very critical to the conversation. And even when it gets awkward, even when it gets tough, even when folks get big mad and they try to shout you down, that we're going to continue to create these safe spaces because we need all of you. Thank you so much for having me, Team Arena. And, let's go get them. Thanks, team.
Thank you, Congresswoman Underwood. I know Arena loves you. You're getting lots of love in the chat.
Thank you.
Just thank you so much for being here and sharing your experience and your insight from doing this work every day that we're going to be talking about. Thank you so much for being here.
Bye.
Bye. Wahoo! Yeah, that truly was just the perfect setting to get us started on this conversation. So we're gonna have we still have a little bit of nuts and bolts before we get into it. I think Jess is going to drop the partner list. Thank you, Jess. If you have been in our sessions over the summer, you've probably filled this out before. But what we'll ask you to do is to just take a peek at the partner list, which I believe has been dropped in the chat. And thank you, Santiago. And just go through that and see if there are any of these organizations that you feel you want to be connected with. And part of what we are doing during Power Rising Summer is making sure that folks have the resources they need to plug in to this work. So, Arena is one of those avenues, but any one of these orgs are amazing to get connected to and to start doing the organizing work with them as well. Um, so just give them that list. I know there's not enough time to fully go through it. Thank you for updating that doc, Jess, so that folks can see it. I know there's not enough time to fully read the list right now. You can access it later, and we'll have ways for you to go through the list. Dang, y'all, that's my bad for not changing the access on the doc before this started. Rookie move on my part. But hopefully you're able to get it. I think, let's see, 56 people have been able to vote thus far. So, or 57%, half of you. Cool. Glad you're able to get in, Lily. Perfect. So I'm going to end the poll. And again, no worries if you weren't able to vote. We'll make sure you have a way to get in touch with these folks before summer's end. Cool. Some housekeeping. Just ask that you stay muted when you're not speaking, actively speaking. The chat can move really fast, so drop your Q&A questions in the Q&A function. If you're having trouble navigating that, we can help you get there. And please don't spam the chat or violate norms. We will toss you out of the Zoom. That hasn't been an issue thus far. Hope today is not the day. The session will be recorded. We will email the recording and the resources to you after the session. Please fill out the feedback survey at the end because we appreciate your feedback and we try to listen to it. Okay, so we're here in constructive disagreement. And yeah, much to the point that Congresswoman Underwood just shared, we're wanting to spend the time today thinking about how we can be in principled disagreements and have constructive dialogue with the people that we are in coalition with. So our session goals are the hope that you can create a personal toolkit for respectful communication, develop a strategy for de-escalating arguments, strategize on how to find common ground, and to strategize on how to find common ground with those who hold different views. So by the end of the session, we hope that you'll have at least a starting point for how to approach difficult conversations. And our grounding questions are, how do I prevent heated arguments when talking about sensitive topics? And how can I begin to organize with people who hold different views? And we're going to be mainly staying in that top question today. How do I prevent heated arguments when talking about sensitive topics? And just a quick disclaimer, I can't tell you what to say in arguments, and there is no way to prepare for every single argument you might have. So this is not a session on persuasion or get out the vote conversations. And this session really isn't designed to help you change anyone's mind. I know that it could be really frustrating having conversations right now when we feel that we are, when we feel that we're right on an issue and we want that other person to be on our team, to get on our side. But this session is not that. The session is not about changing anyone's mind. This session it's not designed to provide you with the exact right thing to say in any given argument, because we want to set you up with the mindset that there's only so much you could anticipate what you should say in a conversation. And also, if we're using active listening, we won't be rehearsing what to say during conversations. But instead, the session is really meant to help you have better arguments, which in this case looks like staying grounded and using active listening to try to find solutions. We think the session and these principles can be used with people who have similar politics to us, people who are maybe, like, for the most part, really ideologically aligned with us, but we disagree on one issue or two issues. So how can we have better conversations with the people that we need to be in coalition with? At the very least, hopefully we can help reduce your anxiety around having difficult conversations, because we'll be practicing some of them. So this is a good time to go to your handouts. And I believe some friends from Marina will be dropping that in the chat. And you can make a copy of the handouts for yourself, so you can take notes and follow along. Thank you, Santiago. And just while you get there, I'll set up this first reflection that we're going to do. And these instructions will be in the handout as well. So to start, we're just going to have a short reflection. And I want to invite you to think about a time that you've had an argument. And this can be an argument with a friend, with a partner, with a parent, a coworker. I encourage you not to pick the most activating or the most triggering argument you've ever had. The goal is to pick something with some energy behind it, but something that won't be too upsetting to reflect back on. And in your doc, there's space there, but you could also just write it out if you'd like. Take a second to write a 1 to 2 sentence short narrative of the argument, and to think about what was the most difficult part of the argument and how the argument made you feel. So, for example, I felt like I wasn't listened to. I felt like the other person didn't care what I was saying. Something along these lines. And we'll take just a quick second for you to write out that reflection. And maybe when you're ready, you can drop a plus in the chat. I'll play some music while you do your reflection. Folks are feeling ready pretty quickly, so maybe just a couple more secs here for other folks if they need it. Okay. So, folks are already sharing in the chat, which is great. I'd love to hear from maybe 1 or 2 people to share what they wrote. And we're going to pause the recording during this quick share, so you don't need to worry about it being on the record. But yeah, I would love to hear from one or two people about what they reflected on what the argument was and how it made them feel back in. All right, so having better arguments. And, why are challenging conversations so hard? Uh, I think this might be a really obvious question, but when we dig beneath the surface, there's a whole realm of personal experiences and histories that affect how we show up to these difficult conversations, right? So during conversations, we might feel activated, meaning we feel a charged emotion like anger, confusion, fear, or rejection. And then when we're activated, we experience challenges to our focus, our judgment, and our assumptions. Um, this is a quote here from Oren J. Sofer, who is a really great mindfulness teacher, as well as a trained instructor in nonviolent communication. But conflict can send a cascade of physiological effects through our bodies, our breathing changes, stress hormones release, and if we lack the skills to meet the swell of energy, our cognitive function alters. Uh, Thanks, Jess, for dropping that resource. So yeah, again, we're bringing a whole realm of our experience to how we're responding or what is happening for us when we might get triggered or activated. So, this first one is mine, when where my mind goes when I'm in a challenging conversation is um, I'm thinking that person doesn't care about my feelings. They don't care enough about my feelings to try to see things from my perspective. Um, and I get very locked in on that view when I'm having a challenging conversation. And oh, some missing text there, but that's okay. Um, and yeah, from any number of examples that folks dropped in the chat or that were just shared here, we all have our own way of responding and the things that our mind does whenever, you know, whenever we are in an argument. So Jess just dropped in the chat here. The person doesn't care enough about my feelings to see from my perspective. Uh, Trying to think of an argument that wasn't triggering. Arguments get triggering for me. In the end, I felt like I wasn't being listened to because the answer wasn't already set, and we're disagreeing because our values just aren't aligned, are some of the things that other folks shared. Um, so how do we avoid getting activated? We want to try to use this idea of principled disagreement, which is an approach to conflict that focuses on finding ways to turn disagreements or differences of opinion into more generative conversations. So again, we're not trying to change anyone's opinion. We are trying to look for common ground and seeing where that common ground can take us in finding getting closer towards solutions for the thing we might be in conflict about. So one of the most important things is to pause when we're having these challenging conversations. So in pausing, we can ensure that emotions don't spill out unskillfully. And you can more thoughtfully consider your reply. And by unskillfully here, I mean that we might have an outburst or we might say something that we didn't mean to say. So in the moments of disagreement, we're really susceptible to that reactivity. And if you're able to notice this happening, we can add in that pause. So whether that's just taking a moment to feel your breath, to feel your feet on the ground, or really any sort of centering technique that works for you. And you might use phrases like, can we pause for a moment? I want to gather my thoughts. I'm not sure. I'd like to think about that. Or use a verbal or visual cue to indicate your thinking, such as or furrowing your brow, if you want to use body language as well. And then we encourage you to get curious. So instead of getting fixated on your view of how you think things should be happening, trying to get curious about where the other person is coming from. So humanizing the other person that you're in conversation with. Because in disagreements, it's really easy and tempting to fixate on our own interpretation or our own, desired outcome of how we want this conversation to look and how we want that person to think about something. So instead of getting fixated on your view of how things should be happening, getting curious about where the other person is coming from, and, even if they don't share our view, understanding their perspective opens up the potential for more creative solutions. So phrases you can use are tell me more. Anything else you'd like me to understand about this? And this last one I really, really, really love using is let me see if I'm understanding what I'm getting is, and then repeating back what the other person is saying. Because sometimes we might be taking in what the other person is saying and interpreting it and thinking our interpretation of what we're hearing is what that person is communicating, when you actually might not be receiving what they're saying. So if we repeat back what we're hearing from the other person in our own words, repeating back in our own words what we think the other person is saying so that they can confirm, so we know we're at least on the same page about, what is trying to be communicated, then that's better ground to be starting from. And a really, really important one is centering relationships. So when you can't come to a single view on an issue, trying to separate the disagreement from the person and trying to see the bigger picture. Because we may never come to a single view on how progress can be achieved. So when our strategies differ, how can we focus on relationships? Because our movement gathers strength from having a diverse coalition working towards that shared goal. So separating the disagreement from the person and attempting to see the bigger picture, because our struggles really are interconnected. And I really think one of the worst things that can happen when we are in disagreement and when we get into that fixed mindset of that person not agreeing with us and not being on the same page is we start to dehumanize them. And we can't do that. We have to center relationships in our organizing work so that we can continue to work towards ways of figuring out how we can work together, even if we aren't fully 100% aligned. So again, some phrases you might use. I'm hearing how important this is to you. I know we both want the best outcome, even if we disagree on how to get there. And I value your perspective, even if I don't agree with it right now. So in these conversations, it can be really easy for things to veer off topic. So another strategy we can use here is reframing with a question. So if, the other person's really getting into their frustration, so, I wanted to throw my phone across the room every time I got a fundraising text, and I got hundreds of them. I think we can all relate to this. You might have been on our panel, at our panel last week about fundraising text. If that person is super fixated on wanting to talk about this one thing, you might reframe with can you think of something the Democrats can do differently that might be a better practice? Another example here is we didn't talk to working class voters enough. We should have gone on Joe Rogan. You might have heard this one a lot during in the weeks and the months after the election. I know I heard this a lot. A reframe or a redirection might be, What sort of conversations do you think would have better helped us connect with working class voters? And then another example here, if the Democrats don't disentangle themselves from big tech, we're doomed. And a reframe of that question might be, what technology solutions could we imagine for the future that serve us better? So, and really the point here is just to, again, we can at times get really hyper fixated on one point and wanting to redirect the conversation towards generative solutions. Because if we're just staying in the complaint, that's a quick way to spiral. Cool. And then, yeah, some phrases you can use if things get heated. And I think this one is really important and applicable, in our political work, but also in any relationship that we might have in our lives. If things get heated, it is fully okay to take a break. And I think this can be really hard to do and to learn how to, bring this up. But just inserting some of these phrases, like, I'd really like to continue our conversation and not in the frame of mind to do that right now. Can we take a break and come back to this? I'd really like to hear what you have to say, and I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, so I don't think I'll be able to listen well. Could we take a break and continue this conversation tomorrow? I want to finish our conversation, and I don't think anything else I say right now will be useful. Could we take a break until whatever date or time? And I'd really like to hear what you have to say, but the way you're saying it is making that very difficult. I wonder if you'd be willing to take a break. Are ways that we can honor the other person and, respect the other person, but also respect that we've, hit our capacity of being able to discuss a certain topic. And we really, really want to ensure during these conversations that we are able to have them in a grounded way. And if things are getting too heated, then, we're never going to be able to actually get to solutions because we will be in that activated space. And then what to do if you don't come to a conclusion or agreement during that conversation. Just offering up here some questions to probe deeper. So could we brainstorm some solutions that would work for both of us? Are you open to exploring other options to work this out? Can you imagine any other strategies that would meet both of our needs? I want this to work for both of us. Would you tell me what your concerns are about the strategy I'm proposing? And would you tell me what might not work for you about what I'm requesting? So just looking at these ways that we can get closer to an answer, and continue to dig into solutions. Cool. So we are going to get into an exercise and into practicing how to actually have better arguments. So we have three friends here, Mo, Tori, and Pete. Could I get a volunteer to read the scenario with Mo for us?
Yeah, I can do it.
Thanks.
So Mo is a charismatic college student. She is your employee at the Gap, and you spend long hours having conversations while folding jeans. Boomer Democrats are so out of touch. I wanted to throw my phone across the room every time I got a fundraising text, and I got hundreds of them. Every single Democrat over 70 needs to step down immediately. It is time for a new generation of leadership that is actually in touch with the electorate. How do you connect with Mo?
Thank you, Raphael. So this is a scenario with Mo. This is how Mo thinks about things. This is what she thinks about the Dems. How do you connect with Mo? And our second scenario, we have Tori. Could I get a volunteer to read the scenario with Tori?
I'd happily read Tori.
Thank you, Lynn.
No worries, I'll come off camera,
Mm.
or on camera rather. Victoria, or Tori, is a full-time mom living in Durham, North Carolina. You met her at a bachelorette party in Austin, Texas, and because you have mutual friends, you see her often. We need to talk to everyone. We shouldn't be afraid to go on podcasts like Joe Rogan or conservative talk radio shows like InfoWars. How do you have a conversation with Tori?
How do you have a conversation with Tori? That is the question. So that is our scenario. Tori wants us to go on InfoWars. How do you have a conversation with Tori? And then one last one that we're going to practice with here, Pete. So can I get one more volunteer to read the scenario with Pete? Dan.
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right. You and Pete both, oh, sorry. You and Pete both volunteer offering support at immigration court. You see each other once a week during your volunteer shift. If the Democrats don't get out of bed with big tech, we're doomed. The Democrats are part of the problem. I'm sitting this next election out. How can you connect with Pete?
How can you connect with Pete? Hopefully we're able to figure it out in these exercises. Thank you so much, man. So these are scenarios. These are the people that we are going to be talking to. So we're going to go into breakout rooms, and you're going to be in breakout rooms of 2. So first and foremost, introduce yourself and get ready to put your acting cap on, because one of you is going to select one of these roles. And I will leave it to you to select the one that you feel most called to. Mo, Pedro, Freudian mind slip. It should be Pete and Victoria or Tori. So this person will be role playing based on the prompt provided. So get into the mindset of Mo, our charismatic college student who is mad at the Democrats, and every Dem over 70 should retire. Or, into the mindset of Pete, who's planning to sit out the next election because the Democrats are in bed with big tech. So you're going to be acting as that person. And the other person is going to be using the tools that we've just discussed. So keep your hand out in front of you. And the 2 of you are going to practice having this challenging conversation. So it's gonna take a little bit of improv for each of you whenever you're playing the role of Mo, Pete, or Tori, but really practicing having this conversation and using some of these tactics and seeing how it feels to try to stay grounded in conversation. So one of you will act out, the other person will be using the tools. And then whenever you feel like you get to a good stopping point, pause and give your partner some feedback on how you felt about the conversation and how it felt. And then you'll switch, and the other person will be in the acting role of our Mo, Pete, or Tori, and the other person will get to practice the prompt. And, practice, see how it feels, take about 7 minutes each, and then we'll come back in the full group and discuss how it went. And, I think maybe the last thing I'll say before you go into breakout rooms is, I've taken courses on nonviolent communication before, which is a lot of where some of these conversation principles and some of these phrases to use come from. And it can feel really clunky and weird when you're practicing these things. So that is okay if you feel like it feels a little robotic to be like, how do you feel? How do you feel about the tactics we use and to try to circle around? So the point of the exercise is to, you don't have to say it in the most eloquent way. It's really about practicing these things and getting these getting kind of embodied in using these conversation skills and these constructive disagreement skills, so that when we're doing these practices, having these challenging conversations in real life, we're able to call on these things to come back to. Okay, I've talked quite a bit, but just very quickly before we go into the breakout rooms, are there any questions? Looks like Pedro is Pete. Pedro is Pete. And sorry, just seeing other things in the chat. And Petro. Go with whichever one you feel called to use in the room. And then it looks like we're going to do breakout rooms, actually do breakout rooms of 2 to 3. So we might give you a little bit more time in the breakouts. Okay. Lovely. I think we are going to open up the breakouts. And while we're in the breakouts, I'm going to catch up on the chat because I feel like there's been a lot there and I haven't had a chance to read it, y'all. All right, Jess, are you ready to open up the breakouts? I'll share my screen once more. On building coalition. Oh, and there it is right there. Remember, there's no exact script to follow in these conversations, and that you won't always get it right. And, I should say, quote unquote, right, in these conversations. But these are resources here that are available to you, and really practicing these things and returning to the point of hopefully we're building relationships with people so that if we don't get it right, we can return to these conversations. Because that's the eventual goal, is that we are in relationship, even if we are, in full agreement. And this other point here, if you only organize with people you fully agree with, then your group size will be finite. And that, internet and social media diets that only reflect what we agree with can really create the misconception that we can create those conditions in real life. And yeah, we might be able to create those conditions in real life, but eventually we will, if we do just only create the conditions in real life where we're only with people we exclusively agree with, 100% all the time ideologically, we will limit the size of our group. And we need more people in our coalition. We need a larger coalition to achieve progress on the goals that we're working towards. So keeping this in mind, if you're in a room where everyone agrees, then it might not be the right room to be in. And yeah, I just wanted to leave you with this quote. This is actually from Let This Radicalize You, which we did a book club on for our July last month. So even if we never develop a sense of mutual respect and understanding, or even come to like the people we're working with, we can still build power with them. In many cases, we must. After all, the whole world is at stake. We must ask ourselves, how much discomfort is the whole world worth? And that is from Let This Radicalize You. But there's also, you can read this chapter of the book in the Boston Review. And I will drop that in the chat here too. Highly, highly recommend. And that closes us out. Just in some next steps, we have a feedback survey. So please do fill that out. That is really helpful to us in making sure we're improving these sessions and hearing how we're doing. We do look at those. We'll send a follow-up email with the recording and any other requests. We'll definitely share this handout and resources that were shared in the chat. Stay in touch, keep in contact with us, join the Arena Community Slack. We'll be having a session tomorrow, a new campaign, Canvassing Data and Strategy Tools. Again, that is from one of our friends in the Power Rising Summer Programming Running Mate. That's tomorrow at 2 Eastern. And we hope you'll continue to read and learn with us. Our August book club read is Tyranny of the Minority. And we'll meet on Thursday, August 28th at 1. And that's all we've got, folks. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you for, engaging in these exercises and these conversations. I know these conversations can be difficult, so really honor you for showing up with all of your vulnerability and doing this work to think about how we can be in principled disagreement together. And hope to see you tomorrow and to see you in more Power Rising Summer Programming. But that's all, folks.
Thanks, Jessica.